Morning, Harvey.
Good morning, Erwin. How are you?
Okay. Yeah.
Noisy crowd.
Well, no, now we're diving in the base medrash.
I know.
Yeah.
No, it's Torah or not Torah. Anyway. Ivy.
Okay.
Who's this?
Yeah. Here you go. Full set up. Harvey's on the phone already.
Okay, so we sincerely acknowledge the generosity of the donors to the learning fund in the shul. Sue and Arnie Gerlich, in memory of many people. Marcia Fetterbush and family, in memory of her husband. Sharon and Fred Lister, family and friends, in memory of her mother. Leslie and Gail Kaplan, in memory of their respective parents. Friends of Avi Gittler, in his memory. Children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren of Toby Paris, in her memory. Friends of Joe Wolf, Charlie Gelfenstein, and Sam Levine, memory of Sam's wife. Month of Learning, Ruvain and Susan Podolsky, his father. Phyllis and Chaim Reese, her mother. Sam and Shifra Coleman, his mother. Charlie Gelfenstein, his mother. And various women of Boca, their friends. Susan Wertman. A week of learning, Clara and Jonas Wazer, our ex-president, in memory of her mother. A day of learning plus a contribution to the Torah Fund, Charlie and Matthew Silverman, her father. Marcia Fetterbush, her mother-in-law. Gail and Milton Meller, her previous husband. A day of learning, Stan and B. Monsowitz for his father, Gladys Sherman, her father, Lynn Rappaport, her father, Miriam Tare Karowski, and Meir Karowski, her mother. And okay. So Kenny will be back on Friday, Bli Neder, and therefore he will resume the giving this year, Mi'etz Hashem, I guess, on Sunday. In the meantime, you have to put up with myself and Ruben. I apologize for that, but it's what it is. Okay, so we've been discussing.
Wait or not?
What?
We're gonna wait till 8:30 or not?
I thought it was 8, it's 8:26. All right, so we have been discussing.
Hello?
Yes?
The doctor on.
Hi.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, presume at the top of the page. But in the remaining 3 minutes of not learning, I will just remind us that we've been talking about it. Once God decrees X, Y, Z will happen to Ruvain or will happen to Boca Raton. In other words, to individuals or to communities. We've been talking about how effective prayer might be in averting the severe decree. And there were two conceptual propositions. One is God handles individuals differently than he handles communities. An individual gets himself in trouble with the Rabbanu Shalai, is pretty finished, but a community, God cuts them more slack than he would be an individual. That's one conceptual framework. The other conceptual framework is that God issues or contemplates or begins the din shel maila, and the evidence is pouring in, and God says so and so is really a lowlife, and I'm going to shorten his life. But then so and so, then there's a period of time, for example, Rosh Hashanah to Yom Kippur. And if the person beseeches the Rabbeinu Shalom, God may cut him some slack. So there is the decree, and there's the chsima, the sealing of the decree, so does prayer after the chsima have any efficacy? That's the other conceptual issue involved. We're on the phone. We don't.
We're good.
So according to one view, even it doesn't matter, community or individual, before the decree, you can do tshuva, with the finalization. So like during the Aseres Yemei Tshuva, you can do tshuva. But after the decree is sealed, finished, can't. Or maybe you can. So we have those two issues, and we've been going back and forth, and it is now time. Okay, so we just concluded with that, and then the last issue that we raised was there are different categories of averas. Maybe God will forgive you bein adam lamakoms, but when it comes to bein adam lachaveros, you have to deal with the person you wronged. And then a corollary to that was, if you are generous of spirit to those who wrong you, then God is generous of spirit to you. We had this story about Rav Huna on his deathbed, and they asked him, "What did you see when you were a goses?" And he says, "Well, I saw that the Beis Din Shel Maila was ready to take me." And God says, "No, he was nice to other people. We've got to cut him some slack," and I recovered. All right. So then the last issue we discussed was kan kaidem gizardin, first line of Yud Ches, kan la'achar gizardin. God is forgiving or can forgive you if you do tshuva prior to the pronouncement of the judgment. But once the judgment is in effect, according to Rabbi Akiva, you're finished. It's over. That's the way it's going to be. Hachinami v'yachid. But the Gemara goes and says, Rabbi Akiva, even Rabbi Akiva, who's the strict opinion over here, is only talking about an individual. However, a whole community, even after the decree, we have, of course, the story of Nineveh, where the whole community did tshuva and God did not destroy them, even though he announced he would. So, Gezardin de Yachid tonight, this question of whether or not a human being's prayer is effective in changing the decree after it's been issued, is itself a machlokes tanayim, Desanya. We have a story. Rabbi Meir once accustomed to telling the following story. Shnayim she'ola lemita v'choylin shaveh. Oila lemita literally means climbed up into bed, but it means they fell sick and were bedridden. and they were on their deathbeds, and they both had the exact same illness, the exact same symptoms. They should have both died virtually at the exact same moment. V'chein shnayim she'alu legardaim. Another story he told was two fellows were accused of a capital crime and were dragged to court. L'din v'dunan shaveh, and the crimes they committed were identical. Zeh yared v'zeh liyared. One of the two sick men recovered, the other died. And regarding v'zeh natzil, v'zeh lo natzal, one of the two alleged criminals was convicted and put to death, and the other was let off. The Beis Din did not convict him. So mipnei ma zeh yared v'zeh lo yared, v'zeh natzil v'zeh lo natzil. What was the difference? We said they both had the exact same illness, the same diagnosis, the same symptoms. They both committed allegedly identical crimes. The evidence against them was identical. Why did one get off and one didn't? Zeh hispalel v'nana. One prayed for relief, to be healed or to be let out of jail, and he was answered. V'zeh hispalel v'lo nana, and the other guy prayed and was not answered. So mipnei ma zeh nana v'zeh lo nana. Why did one get his prayer accepted and the other's prayer was rejected? Why was that? So v'zeh lo hispalel tefillah shlema v'lo nana. I'm sorry. Zeh hispalel tefillah shlema v'nana. One prayed a perfect prayer and was answered. The other was a flawed prayer and was not answered. And Rashi over here says that shlema means with kavanah. Now that's very difficult to understand. I mean, if I'm on my deathbed and I'm praying, God, I want to see the next great grandchild born, cut me a little slack here. Or if I'm in jail and they're going to put me to death and I pray, God, please, please. I can't imagine a tefillah with where I would do it without kavanah. I mean, that's inconceivable, and that's what Rebbe Elazar says. Rebbe Elazar says that's an impossibility. How long could you be about to be put to death and daven but not have kavanah? It makes no sense. Rebbe Elazar says, "Kan kaidim gezardin, kan lacher gezardin." One prayed before the court issued the decree. One prayed before the Beis Din Shalmaila said this guy's not getting better. And the other prayed after the fact. It was too late. So this is to support the Rebbe Akiva's position. However, and we started this brisa by saying it's a machlokes tanayim. However, Rabbi Yitzchak Omer Yafatza Akala Adam Ben Kaidim Gizardin Ben Lacher Gizardin. Rabbi Yitzchak says no. You can pray before, and of course God might answer you, but you can pray after also, and God taka might answer you. So we see it is a machlokes tanayim. Yes.
The Gemara talks in several places about people who are called Olam Haba, in 1 second.
That's a different deal altogether.
All you said, Yom Kippur, it's full of nothing.
No, but that's a totally different thing. That is, you do some kind of an extraordinary schus, or you do some kind of true tshuva shlema, and you could have, if you can calculate how to do this, good, God bless you. But you could be a total lowlife your whole life, and in the minute prior to your death, do tshuva shlema, and all of those averos will be erased. The problem is we don't know when that moment is. And a person who is so accustomed to living a non-kosher life, to put a label, so he'll do his tshuva shalema, and 15 minutes later, he'll see a pretty girl, and it's all over. So it doesn't really work. But if you can, or you could be living a life of a complete and total low life and donate a kidney. In other words, we talked about this several times. We know God weighs your averis against your schusim, but we have no way of understanding what counts and what the weight of each thing is. The Boy Scout who helps the old lady across the street could gain Olam Haba because she had to get to the doctor's office. The next Boy Scout could drag an old lady across the street, and she says, I don't want to be on that side of the street. We don't know how to weigh the various elements. So we have to live as good a life as we're capable of living and work on living an even better life today than we did yesterday. And that's the only shot we've got to guarantee.
In davening on Yom Kippur, it says, "Harotz Hashem b'mos hameis."
Right. Right. And we've been learning. There is machlokes on exactly how Yom Kippur works too. Do you have to do tshuva? There's a shita that even without you're doing tshuva, Yom Kippur tears up the calendar, gives you a restart. On the other, these are all metaphysical notions. You see the Tanaim here. You're grappling with the concept. You see the various Tanaim here have different shitas. They're also grappling with the concept. It's not easy to get your hands around. That's why I say you're only real, you go and you buy life insurance and you buy fire insurance and you have automobile insurance. You take reasonable steps to protect yourself against bad things happening. To live your life, to turn down the cheeseburger is like buying insurance. To avert your glance when a girl has a mini skirt on is buying insurance. To start using Beis Yosef instead of, whatever level you're on, you're making one more step is buying life insurance. Mamish, it's buying life insurance. All right, in any event.
There is a sheet that says buying life insurance is, meaning you read it.
It's a what?
It's a Gemara. But there's also the concept of hishtadlus. And when you buy life insurance, it's a misappropriate lashon. It's really death insurance. When you buy life insurance, you're betting you're going to die before you pay so much money into the company. And they're betting you're going to live while they can collect more money than they have to pay out. So that's just doing your hishtadlus so your grandchildren can still go to yeshiva. Mm-hmm. Buying life insurance doesn't buy you extra time. Mm-hmm. All right, weiter in the Gemara. So we come back to the machlokes about, we're pretty much resolved now with individuals, but we're still grappling with kind of community, collectively do tshuva, and have a decree remitted. The Gazar din de Tzibur mi mikra. Is it really true you can cause the decree to be torn up if it's a community? V'haksiv, and there's echad aimer. There is one pasuk in Yirmiyah that says as following: Kavsi me Ra'a libech, and it goes on Yerushalayim that you'll have matzil. If you look the Torah or Hashalim, the Aleph, the first pasuk, God is saying through Yirmiyahu to the sinful citizens of Jerusalem, wash yourself of sin, and I, God, will let you off the hook. That's what the first pasuk says. Uksiv, but there's another pasuk says, Ki im tekabsi b'neser. even if you scrub yourself with a highly caustic cleansing agent, the and you put in a huge amount of borax, which is a cleaning agent, in the water with which you wash yourself, nevertheless, nichtam onech lefanai. Nichtam, your sins, the stain of your sin will stay in front of me. So these two psukim clearly contradict one another. My love, what's the deal? Kan kaidin gizardin, kan la'achar gizardin. So one way of resolving it is saying that before God issues the final judgment, Jerusalem can pray and redeem itself. But once God does the final judgment, it's all over. Lo, Gemara comes back. They're both talking post-proclamation. Below kasha, it's not a problem. Kan big zor din sheyesh imo shavua. In the pasuk that says the stain of the sins remain, that's where God says, Kaviyachal, I swear I'm going to destroy Jerusalem. And Kan, Bigzar Din She'ein Imo Shvua. The other is a case where God says, I'm going to destroy Nineveh. Not, I swear I'm going to destroy Nineveh. Now, obviously, this is a Kaviyachal, and we have to take it as metaphoric, but to the Rav Shmuel ben Ami, like Rav Shmuel ben Ami explains, the Omar, Rav Shmuel ben Ami, the Amri le Omar, Rav Shmuel ben Nachmeni, Omar Rav Yonason. So some Shmuel said it in the name of Rav Yonason, Minayin, Gazardin Shieshino Shavua She'enu Nikra. How do we know that if God swears Kaviyachal to do something, that's that? He's not going to back down. Shenemar ulechein nishpati lebeis Eli. Yiskaper on beis Eli bezevach ubemincha. I have sworn, God says, regarding the house of Eli, that their sins will never gain atonement, not if they bring chatasin, not if they bring asham, not if they bring minchas, nothing's gonna work. Omer Rava explains, bringing korbanos and thinking that'll get them off the hook, that's not gonna work. Avo miskaper b'Torah. But if they change their ways, if they sit and learn Torah, maybe they can get a kapara. That sacrifice doesn't work. Not only do you have to start learning, but you have to start doing. So you actually really have to turn your life around. Maybe it could work. Now, how do Rava and Abaya making these statements has a certain poignancy, because the Gemara explains Rava and Abaya, Mebeis Eli Ka'asu. They were descendants of the house of Eli. Rava, the Asek B'Torah, Hoya Arba'in Shnin. People from Beis Eli, we'll see in a minute, died before they were 20 years old. They died as they reached adulthood, the way we think of adulthood. But Rava, who learned Torah, managed to live till 40. Abaya, Dasik the Torah, Gemilas Chasadim, Hoyashisin Shnin. He both practiced Gemilas Chasadim as well as learning, and he lived to 60. So it's their comment in the context of their own lives is a very poignant message for us.
Was it Rabba or Rabba?
What?
Rabba.
Rabba.
Okay, because Rabba
With a hey. not an aleph.
Rabba
Rabba.
made the statement originally.
No, Rabba made this. Oh,
Yeah, what-
He said, was that it?
Rava, I apologize. Rava with an aleph made the statement, and Rabba with a hey died at 40. But Abaya was in both memories. All right. Abaya to Asik Batara Gemilas Chasadim Hayishtin Shnit. Abaya lived for 60 years. Tana Rabbanan. Now we're going to get a Maisa Shahoya. Mishpacha Achas Hoysi B'Shalayim. There was a family in Jerusalem. Shehu Meisesa Meisin B'nei Shmona Esrei Shana. The men of this family all died as they approached maturity when they were about 18 years old. So Ba'u Bahadu'u es Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. So members of the family came to Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai and said, all our young men are dying. What can we do about it? Amar lahem, he replied to them, Shema mishpachas Eli atem. Maybe your family are descendants of Beis Eli. Diksiv, it says concerning that family, Kol marbis beisecha yamusu anoshim. Anyone who grows up in the household of a descendant of Beis Eli will die as they approach adulthood. L'chu, he says to them, go, v'asku b'Torah, v'chayim. Go learn Torah, go to Kollel, and your boys will live. Halchu v'asku b'Torah v'chayim. So the boys all joined yeshivas, they sat in Kollel and they survived. V'hoyu kairin also mishpachas Rabbi Yochanan al Shmai. So the family's name was changed from Beis Eli to Beis Yochanan. And this may be a reference back, we learned earlier, the various ways of changing your circumstance is a name change. Now here the name change happened after, but I just thought I'd point out that possible relationship. Amar Shmuel ber Inya, Mishmei Derav. Minayin the Gestardin shall tzuber she'ena nechtam. How do we know that God never actually seals a decree against the community? In other words, the community, until the very last minute before the earthquake, the community's prayers could avert the earthquake. Eina nechtam? What are you talking about? We just read a pasuk, B'ksiv. Nechtam avonech lefona. Your sins nechtam. Your sins remain a stain in front of me. We see that the decree is sealed.
It's significant, but you notice that one is written with a ches and one.
They're two different words. They're two different shroshim. Sealed and stained. The kesem is a stain. All right. So anyway, right there. Ella afa, but I almost made that mistake too. It is close. Ella afal pi shenechtam nikra. So the stain could be there, but God could still rip up the decree. Or it could be sealed, and God could still rip up the decree. Shenemar, kashem elekenu v'chol koreinu elav. God is always there when we call out to him, because we're Jewish, and he has a special relationship with us. V'haksiv, dirshu Hashem v'hamotzeu. Pray to God, call out to God, look for God when he is available. So either he's always around and always listening, or there are propitious times for prayer. Okay, that's a contradiction. We come back to the same teretz. When it comes to individuals, you have to pray at a propitious moment. But when it comes to the community, God's always there. That's why it's important to daven with a minyan rather than at home, if at all possible. Because when you're with a tzibur, your prayers are always heard. When you're at home, God, might not be as receptive. Be yochad emas. So when is the right time to pray? Omer Rabba Baravua, Eila Suriyamei Yomim Shabain Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippurim. This is the time frame we call the Aseres Yemei Tshuva, and that is why we are noheg to undertake various chumras during the Aseres Yemei Tshuva that we might not do otherwise. People are noheg to use Pas Yisrael, to use Chalav Yisrael, be more makbid and bishul Yisrael. These are inyanim. Now, somebody might say, wait, look, the day after Yom Kippur, I'm going back to Chalav Stam. What's pshat here? So what you're saying to God is, look, I'm doing every single thing I can possibly do to demonstrate my true sincerity. And I'm undertaking these chumras. I may not maintain them, but we learned earlier that God looks at who you are now, even if he knows you're going to be different tomorrow. We had it with Abraham's oldest son, Yishmael. God saved him for who he is now, Asher Husham. So this is sort of it. When you're busy doing tshuva, make sure that what the person God looks at is worthy of having that tshuva be accepted. And if that means a couple extra chumras, it's a small price to pay. 3 cents extra for the Chalav Yisrael is a small price to pay. Vayehika Aseres Hayamim Yigaif Hashem es Novel. So there's a story about a fellow named Novel who David sent 10 messengers to him. And David said, look, my army needs provisions. Could you give us some stuff? And Novel said, no, forget it. His lashon was, who's this guy David? Never heard of him. Ben Yishai? A lowlife. This guy can't be the leader of the army, the king of Israel. However, Novel did give a cookie to each of these 10 messengers. Okay, so Asara Yomim Mai Aviditayu. What was the big deal about this extra 10 days? Novel got killed 10 days later by God. So some say that this is Ka'ain, the Aseres Yemei Tshuva, and some say it was Mamish. It was Rosh Hashanah when they came, and it was Yom Kippur when he died. Okay. So Aseres Yomim Yogav Hashem es Novel, God killed Novel 10 days later. Asara Yomim Mai Avidatayu. What's the big deal about these 10 days? Omer Rav Yehuda, Omer Rav, Keneged Eser Legimos Shenosa Nevel of Day David. He got credit for the 10 cookies he gave the 10 messengers. Okay. Omer Rav Nachman, Omer Rabba Baravuha, Elu Asari Yomim, Shebein Rosh Hashanah Liyom Kippurim, that these 10 days happened to have been the week, the Aseres Yemei Tshuva. Now we're going back to the Mishnah. I told you when we learned the term B'nai Marom in the Mishnah that there are various pshatim, and I promised you we get to that. Here we are. I'm not the Rebbeinu Shalom, but I do keep my promises. For Rosh Hashanah, Kol Boei Olam Oivrin Lefanav Kivnei Marom. On Rosh Hashanah, every human being passes before Hashem like B'nai Marom. My B'nai Marom. What does the phrase B'nai Marom mean? Hacha Tagimu B'nai Amrona. If you look at the word Amrona, that's an Aramaic word for lambs. and the Hebrew cognate would be moron, mem resh nun. So that's the image of the chute with the narrow little gate that all the little baby lambs pass through, and every 10th one becomes Maisu Behema. So that's the image there. Reish Lekesh Aimer Kamailos Beis Moron. There was a town at the foot of a hill in Bavel called Moron. And there was a narrow little path that went up this steep hill one side and down the other. So if you were trying to go beyond the city and you'd have to go over this hill and you had to go single file on the path. So B'nai Moron, like the people of Moron, were trying to get to Mechuzah or wherever it was next. So Omar Rav Yehuda Omar Shmuel, another interpretation, that, when the soldiers are to have a review, the soldiers all march before the king or the general is single file. And then he says, you straighten your, whatever you had to, fix your belt, whatever, the general. So Omar Rabba Bar Rav Chana, Omar Rav Yochanan, he says, Kulan Niskarin Biskira Achas. The key to understanding how God can judge 7 billion people when they're walking one before the other, each gets his instant in the limelight, so to speak. But God just takes one quick glance and can judge every single person individually, but in that one global glance. Okay, Ananami Tanina, we learned the same thing. Amar of Nachman Bar Yitzchak, Afananami Tanina. We learned this from our Mishnah, because in our Mishnah we had a pasuk that seemed a little awkward. Hayotzer Yachad Liba. He created individually their heart in the plural, their hearts. Hamevin es kol ma'asehem, and he comprehends all of their deeds. So this pasuk is an allusion to everybody has their one at a time, but he judged all simultaneously. My Tamar, how do you interpret that pasuk? Ilema hachikamar, if you say it means Devrana hule alma miyached libayhu akechadade. If you say it means that every single human being acts with the same motivations, same thought processes, we know that's not true. I come to shul on time because I gotta say korbanos, and he comes to shul on time because his wife throws him out. And somebody else comes to shul on time because he wants to be among the first 10. We all get there at the same time, but we all have our own motivation. Elalav hachikomer. So how do you have to interpret the pasuk? Hayotze roe yachad libam. God can look at the many hearts at once. Omevin al kol ma'asehem, but he can individually understand the behaviors, the motivations, the machshavas of each and every person. Mishnah. Al shisha chadashim ha-shluchin yotzin. 6 months in the year, the Bezdin in Jerusalem, after they do the Kiddush HaChodesh, send out messengers to Babel to tell the people what day, because it could have been the 30th or the 31st, since the previous Rosh Chodesh, it depends on Al-Pi Re'iyah, it wasn't always consistent. So they send out messengers to the Goyla so they could calculate what they need to know for that month. Al Nisan b'fnei Pesach, Al Nisan in order to know when Pesach would be, Al Av Mipnei Atanis, in the month of Av to know when Tisha B'Av would be. Al Elul Mipnei Rosh Hashanah. On first of Elul to know that 30 days later would be Rosh Hashanah. I couldn't send it on Rosh Hashanah because that's Rosh Chodesh. Al Tishrei on Rosh Chodesh of Tishrei Rosh Hashanah Mipnei Takanas Ma'ados to know when Yom Kippur and Sukkot and Shmini Atzeres would be. Al Kislev Mipnei Chanukah on Kislev to know when Chanukah would be. The Al Adar Mipnei Purim to know when Purim would be. Okishohoyim is make Beis Hamikdash Kayim, but in when the Beis Hamikdash was still in existence, Yitzin Af Al Iyar Mipnei Pesach Cotton. The 7th month they sent out messengers. So if you were tamei or sick and you didn't schlep to Jerusalem for Pesach, you would have time to get to Jerusalem for Pesach Sheni. Okay. V'lifku nami atamas v'teves. So the Gemara says, if you're going to send out messengers in Av to alert people to fast day in Av, Tisha B'Av, what about Teves and Tammuz? There are fast days in Teves and Tammuz as well. That's the question. So the Gemara says the Omer Rav Huna bar Bizna, Omer Rav Huna bar Bizna, Omer Rav Shimon Chasida, the great tzaddik Rav Shimon, and I don't know which Rav Shimon this is. My diksiv. Now we're going to have a very difficult pasuk. Kamar Hashem. This is the pronouncement of God. Tzavakas, the God of hosts. Soim Aravi'i. There is a fast of 4. Tzom HaChamishi, a fast of 5. Tzom HaShavi'i, a fast of 7. V'tzom HaAsiri, a fast of 10. Yihu lebeis Yehuda l'sasan l'simcha. These will be for Judea days to party hardy, days of joy and happiness. What's going on? Kari l'hutzayin. The first pasuk first calls them fast days. V'kari l'husasin v'simcha, and then it calls them days of joy. So the Brisa tries to explain it. Bisman she'esh shalom, at a time when there is shalom shleima for the Jewish people. That means there's a Jewish king, there's a Sanhedrin, there's a Beis Hamikdash. Yehiyu sasin l'simcha. There'll be days of joy and gladness. We know that Tisha B'Av will become a Yom Tov, a festive holiday when the Mashiach comes. Ein shalom, but if it's bad news for the Jews, so it's a day of fasting. So that's one interpretation. It's an either or deal. One, it's a fast day for absolute certainty until Mashiach comes, and then there'll be holidays. But there's another, but Rav Papa takes a more moderate position. Hachi Komar, here's what the pasuk means. Bisman she'esh shalom, when there is this perfect tranquility with a Jewish king and a Sanhedrin and a Beis Hamikdash, Yi l'sasin l'simcha, the fast days will revert to be holidays. Yesh gezeres hamalchus, when there is official persecution of the Jews, some, then they're fast days. Ein gezeres hamalchus v'ein shalom, but if it's a time like now, where Israel is not being persecuted, he said he went, but where Israel is not being persecuted by the Romans or the Greeks or the Babylonians, and there are no gezeres except for Netanyahu up against being religious. Okay, so then Ratzu misanin, ratzu ein misanin. The fast days become optional. You choose to fast, fast. You choose not to fast, you don't have to fast. Now, this is like a global thing. So it's already been predetermined that we fast. So don't think that this is like a personal choice. Klal Yisrael has made accepted. We think of there's minhag, which is what you choose to do. There's Kabbalah, which is you choose, you accept it upon yourself, but now it's obligatory to your descendants forever. And we all have a Kabbalah, if we're Ashkenazim, to fast on the tiniest until Mashiach comes.
And the Romans were in charge of the fasting.
Yeah, on Tisha B'Av. Yeah, we're going to get there in a minute. No, that's fine. It's a good question, and we're going to get there in a minute. That's going to be a discussion in the Gemara. By the way, just to explain this a little better, Sfardim, at least Sfardim from the Syrian and Moroccan rites, they make an announcement the Shabbos prior to each Tainus. This Thursday is a Sarah B'Teves, and everybody has to fast because they take this more literally, that they have, if you choose to fast, you have to fast. So they make an announcement, our community chooses to fast, and they do that before each fast day. So it's not just a theoretical thing. So the Gemara says, if they don't sound out messengers in Teves and Tammuz to alert us to those fast days, the pasuk talked about a whole bunch of fast days, Tisha B'Av among them, Tisha B'Av Nami. So why do we bother sending out messages on Tisha B'Av? And here's the answer to Dov's question. Omer Rav Papa says, shiny Tisha B'Av is different. They fasted even when Bayis Sheni was in existence. Hoil v'huchfilu bo saros. Because of all the multitude of horrible things that happened to the Jewish people on Tisha B'Av. The Omar Mar, the master announced, B'Tisha B'Av Charav Habayis Rishayna, the first base of Mikdash was destroyed on Tisha B'Av. Ubishniya, the second base of Mikdash, was also destroyed on Tisha B'Av. The Nilkida Beitar, the city of Beitar, was destroyed by the Romans. The Nichrish Ha'ir, the city of Jerusalem, decades later, was plowed under after the destruction of the Bayis Rishon. So even though they did not send out messengers for Tammuz and Teves, they did for Tisha B'Av. So Mastama, they did fast, even when there was a Sanhedrin and even when there was a Beis Hamikdash. Tanya, we have a brisa. Now we're going to get a long brisa, and then we're going to get Reb Shimon's objection to that brisa and his interpretation. Tanya, we have a brisa. Omer Reb Shimon explains to us, Arba Devarim Hoya the Rebbe Akiva Daresh, Rebbe Akiva Darshu 4 psukim. The Ein Darish Gemai, so I don't darshan those psukim, I don't explicate those psukim the same way. Now we're going through this last brisa, these last psukim about the Tzom and the Simcha, and we're going to count them out and work it out. Tzom HaRevi'i, the 4 fast, Zet Tisha B'Tammuz. We set our noheg to fast on the 17th of Tammuz. They fasted on the 9th. Shabo Huvkra Ha'ir, because that's the date where the city wall of Jerusalem was broken down by Nebuchadnezzar. Now we shifted to the 17th because the Roman siege was the 17th, and we don't fast on both, but they fasted on the 9th. Shenemar, L'chodesh HaRavi'i, in the 4th month, B'tisha L'chodesh, on the 9th of the month, Yachazek Hara'ov Ba'ir, there was an incredibly severe famine in the city. Even the farmers didn't have food. V'tekava ha'ir, and the city wall was broken through. Va'amai karele revi'i. So why is that called the fast of 4? Revi'i l'chadashim, because counting from Nisan, Tammuz is month number 4. Tzom Chamishi Zeh Tisha B'Av. So following along, the fast of 5 is Tisha B'Av. Shabo Nisraf Beis Elokeinu, because that's the day, the Tisha B'Av is the date on which the Beis Hamikdash was set on fire. Va'amai karele Chamishi. Why do we call it the fast of 5? Chamishi l'chadashim, because Av is the 5th month counting from Nisan. Tzom hashavi'i zeh shloisha b'tishrei. That's the 3rd of Tishrei. Shabo nehera Gedalia ben Achikam, because that fast. I don't like the translation. I can play Rabbi Green. I don't like the Art Scroll translation, because the Art Scroll translation is that's the day that Gedalia ben Achikam was assassinated. The fact is, Gedalia ben Achikam was assassinated on Rosh Hashanah. So we couldn't fast on Rosh Hashanah because it's Rosh Hashanah. So today we can't fast on the 2nd because it's still Rosh Hashanah. But even before the Takana to have 2 days Rosh Hashanah, they considered the day after Rosh Hashanah Isru Chag. They couldn't fast that. So they had to be diced of the fast to the 3rd. But in any event, the fast is to commemorate the assassination of the last Jewish ruler, governor, during Bayis Rishon times. Omi Hargu, who was the assassin, Yishmael ben Nasanya Hargu, the assassin's name was Yishmael ben Nasanya. So, interesting question. We have 3 fasts: one, breach of the wall, siege of the city, breach of the wall, burning down the Beis Hamikdash. And then we toss in a 4th fast because a single human being was assassinated. So what's pshat? To teach us, shall kulam asnisin shall tzadikim kisreifas beis Elokeinu. To teach us that the death of a tzaddik, the death of an important person to the Jewish community, is like the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. That's pshat. Va'amai karele shvi'i. Why do we say it's the fast of 7? Shvi'i l'chadash, it's the 7th month, Tishrei. Tzom asiri. What's the fast of 10? Asar b'Tevis. That's the 10th of Tevis. Shabo somech melech Bavel al Yerushalayim. That's the day that the king of that Nebuchadnezzar reached the walls of the city of Jerusalem. Shenemar v'yehi dvar Hashem alai. The prophet says, God's word came to me b'shana Tishris on the 9th year, v'chodesh Asiri on the 10th month, v'asr l'chodesh on the 10th day. Lamor, what God said to me was, Ben Adam, human beings, ksav lecha es shem hayom es etzem hayom hazeh somech melech Bavel al Yerushalayim. Write down this date. Remember this date forever, because this is the day that the king of Bavel got to the city of Jerusalem. Weiter. But Amai Karele Asiri, why is that called the fast of the 10th? Asiri Lachadashim. It's the 10th month. Hello, Rui Zel Rishon. So when we wrote it, when the pasuk was written, it starts out and it labels each of the tainisim, and it labels Asar of the Teves is the fourth tainis mentioned. But if you go chronologically, Nebuchadnezzar reached Jerusalem in Teves. He broke through the wall in Tammuz. He burned down the Beis Hamikdash in Av, and at a later date in Tishrei, Gedaliah was murdered. So why is it written non-chronologically? That's the kash on the table. You should have said Asar B'Tevis first. Lama nichtav kan. Why is it written where it is? Kedei lahasider hakadashim tikuna. To do it in chronological, in calendaric order, in the order on which the dates appear annually on a calendar. That's Reb Shimon telling us Rabbi Akiva's brisa. Now Reb Shimon says why he doesn't like it. As far as I'm concerned, I would not have interpreted the pasuk like that. You know, when it says the month, the fast of 10, that was really the 5th of Teves. So apparently before Bayis Sheni, they fasted on the 5th of Teves. Why? Shebo bas shmeina legeula shehuchsa ha'ir. That's the day that the people in Bavel, remember, who there were already Jews in Bavel, and the people in Bavel, they didn't have Twitter or Instagram. They had to send people Sheres Hapleta, guys who survived the destruction of Jerusalem, staggered into Bavel with the news that the city was sacked. Shenemer Yehi Vishtei Esrei Shana, in the 12th year, Siri V'chamisha L'chodesh, on the 10th day, on the 10th month, on the 5th day, L'gulasenu, of our exile, Bo Eli Hapali, a serious Plata guy, a refugee, came to us, Yerushalayim, from Jerusalem, Lamar, Huchsa Ha'ir, the city was destroyed. V'yasu Yom Shemua Kiyom Sreifa. And they declared the day they got the news was a fast day commemorating the actual destruction several months earlier. V'nirin Kedivrei Midivrov. I like my opinion better than Rabbi Akiva. Sha'ani Omer al Rishon Rishon. Because if you look at it my way, the pasuk is in both calendar and chronology. Okay? First is first, V'al Achron Achron, and last is last. V'hu Omer al Rishon Achron. But Rabbi Akiva put the first last. The Alachron Rishon, and he put the last first. Okay. Ella Shahu Moinala Seder Chadashim, but what Rabbi Akiva wanted to do was do it in the calendar order, Vani Moinala Seder Peranios, and I want to do it in the chronology of the terrible things that happened. Weiter. Itmar, we have a statement. Rav and Rebbe Chanina Amre, they both say, and somehow the Gemara doesn't say Travaihu here, Butler Megillus Tainus. All right. There was a sefer called Megillus Tainus, and it was sort of an open book. And whenever there was a minor miracle or what was perceived to be a minor miracle, they would record in that sefer. Today is the 23rd, 22nd of Cheshvan. A minor miracle happened today. You're not allowed to have a fast, like a halam fast, whatever it is today, and you're not allowed to do hespedim today. Similarly, if something bad happened, there was a car crash in Wilburton, say, they would declare today is a minor fast. And they would keep this ongoing cumulative record of events. So Rav and Rav Chana, Batla Megillus Tainus, we were forgetting, we're eliminating from consideration this calendaric record of when you can fast, when you can't, when you can do hespedim, and when you can't. Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, lo batla Megillus Tainus. No, you can't throw away material from the Sanhedrin. These were claimed by the Sanhedrin. You can't do that. Rabbi Yanina Amrita batla Megillus Tainus. They say it's torn up, hachikomar, and that's what the pasuk meant. Bisman shalom yihiyu sasana simcha. Now, when things are tranquil, then that list of days that you could fast become non-fast days. Ain shalom time, and when they're not fast, when there is no peace, then they can be fast days. So you can have the same date to be one or the other. You can't have a takana when what could be what. So that's the deal. Vahanach nami kihane. And what about the fact that once a thing is in Megillus Tainus, it's treated as if it's a Kabbalah. It's treated as if it's in Navi. And you really, how can you go and you say you're changing it? So Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, Amrei, lo batla Megillus Tainus. That's why they say it can't be nullified. Hanihu, the Solina hu Rachmana b'binyan beis hamikdash. These days that are stipulated are related to God's telling us to build the Beis Hamikdash. Aval Hanach the Kedayame Kaime. But these fast days that we enumerated are Beis Hamikdash related. But the ones in Megillus Tainus, some of them are before the Beis Hamikdash, the day that the Jews crossed the Yarden and the water split, the day that this king buckled and you blew the trumpets and Yericho's walls fell. These are all, many of them were far more ancient even than the Beis Hamikdash, and therefore who are we to come along and be Mavatal? Mesi Rav Kahana. Rav Kahana has a challenge to the previous perspective. Maisa v'gazru tainus b'Chanukah b'Lud. In Megillus Tainus, you're not allowed to fast on Hanukkah. Hanukkah, you light Hanukkah candles. Hanukkah, you say Al Nisim. And most critically, Hanukkah, you say Hallel. It would be a complete internal contradiction to fast and the day that you're saying Hallel. It's like an impossibility. But they said Hallel, they made it a fast day anyway in the city of Lud. So Yored Rebbe Eliezer L'Rochatz. Normally on a fast day, you don't publicly bathe, but Rebbe Eliezer marched publicly with his servant holding his towel and his, soap on a rope, and he marched into the bathhouse and he publicly bathed. Rebbe Yeshua Siper. Rebbe Yeshua made the barber open the shop and give him a haircut. V'amru they said to the rest of the community who was fasting, so go ahead. V'nis'anu al mashim nisam. Go and fast if you feel like fasting. But we're not going to fast. In other words, this was a snide kind of a remark. You guys are fasting? It's Hanukkah. So we see we have a problem here. Why, if you're bottled, despite my observation that we say Hallel, if you nullify Megillus Tainus, then you no longer have the rule you can't fast on Hanukkah. So you could fast on Hanukkah. So Omer, but why did they protest? Omer Reb Yosef Shani Hanukkah. Hanukkah is different, even with the nullifying Megillus Tainus. You still can't fast on Hanukkah. The Ika mitzvah, because of the various mitzvahs related with Hanukkah. Omer Abaye. So you know what? If you're gonna, what it's Megillus Tainus that tells us light candles. It's Megillus Tainus that tells us say Hallel and Al Nissim. If you're ripping up Megillus Tainus, then there's no justification for the very existence of Hanukkah. Ella Omer Reb Yosef, so Reb Yosef says, shiny Hanukkah, Dimefarnesim Nisa, because of the concept of Pirsum and Nisa. So the various Meforshim have different takes on what this means. The simplest explanation is Hanukkah was so widely and popularly supported by the people. Everybody had menorahs in their windows, so everybody knew about Hanukkah last year. How can you cancel it this year? On a deeper level, because Hanukkah is one of the core, Purim and Hanukkah, they want to either destroy us physically or destroy our ability to practice our religion. So Pirsum Nisa, that God intervenes in history to preclude either the physical destruction or the spiritual destruction of Yiddishkeit. Okay, weiter. Moshe Rav Acha Bar Huna, Rav Acha Bar Huna also argues with Rav and Rav Chananya. The Tilta B'Tishrei, on the 3rd of Tishrei, that's what we thought. Batelas Adkarta Min Shitaria. Okay. On the 3rd day of the month of Tishrei, the Sanhedrin made a decree, the Goyish king made a decree. You could not use the term God in any of its forms in a contract. So like Lahavdil, Goyim put, today is the 2022nd year of our Lord, Lahavdil. Or they would write, this is the 5th year of King so-and-so who prays to God. They would mention God in shtaros, but that was canceled. Why? Shegazra Malchus Yavan Gezerah Shelo Hiskir Shem Shmayim Al Pihem, that you could no longer, the Goyim, the Greeks, the Antiochus and his ilk, said you could no longer mention God in secular documents. Kishagavra Malchus Chashmonai v'nitzchum, when the Chashmonai became sufficiently powerful to overcome the Greeks, they made a decree. These are the Tzedukim. Hiskenu shohu machzirin shem shemayim afilu b'shtaros. What? That's correct. Well, they were the first of, you'll see. That this is one of the issues that caused the initial breach between most of the Tzedukim were Kahanim or their friends. And most of the Perushim were the Rabbanon and those that followed them. This is one of the earliest signs of that breach. And that's why I said Tzedukim, so you would ask, so I could give that explanation. Okay, so the Chashmonai, when they reclaimed authority over the Jewish people, said, start putting God back in the contracts. And that's what they would do. Here's, and the way the wording would be was Bishach kach kach on such and such a date, liyochanan kohen gadol lekel elyon. Because now it wasn't the kings; these were they didn't yet call themselves kings, but the Kohen Gadol took secular power as well as ritual power, and the contract would now say in the 5th year of Yochanan Kohen Gadol serving God, meaning after the reclamation of the Beis Hamikdash. When the rabbis, the Perushim, got wind of this notion of calling it dating by Yochanan and, what the servant of God, they said, I'm sorry, they said, I'm sorry, look, Schwartz wrote an IOU to Avrami. Schwartz paid Avrami up. Avrami rips it up and throws in the garbage. The star is of no value anymore. The Nimsta star, the document with God's name in it, will be now in a garbage can. Obitlum, they nullified the takana of the Chashmonai. And on that very day, Asuhu Yom Tov. The fact that the Jewish community accepted the rabbinic nullification and rejected the Chashmonai takana, they made the 3rd of Tishrei a holiday. And that holiday, this is a raya. It was a tainus. We observe it as a tainus again, but it was a tainus. They undid the tainus and made it a holiday, and the people accepted it. That's a raya to butler the Megillus tainus. The Isal Gedaitach butler Megillus tainus, but if you think that they did not, that it was nullified, kamaisa butler. The first holiday was already nullified. The Asri Naisa Musafin, and here we're adding a new holiday. So you can't say that it was bottled, and we'll stop there. And I apologize for going so long. Reuven will do it tomorrow. I'll do it Friday, and Amir Hashem, Rabbi Kenneth Green Shlita will be back on Sunday, and we'll continue.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. I don't know how to turn you off, so. Well, that's I'm sure they didn't all die on their 18th birthday.
But the point is, it's strong.
Yeah, okay, yes.
Have a good day, everyone.
There?
Oh,